The Human Code. The book they tried to erase. They warned you not to ask. They told you that some answers were too dangerous, too destabilizing, too heavy for the human mind to bear. They built religions to distract you, sciences to explain you, systems to domesticate you. But none of them ever dared to tell you what you truly are. This book does. It will not soothe you. It will not comfort you. It will dismantle every idea you've ever had about what it means to be human, until all that remains is the raw, blinding truth. You were never flesh and blood. You were a code written before time began. Introduction: The Human Code and the War for Your Identity. For as long as memory stretches, humanity has been kept in a state of holy ignorance. We have been taught that we are bodies, fragile, finite, carbon-born creatures fighting for survival on a rock spinning through space. We have been told that consciousness is a byproduct of biology, a flicker of electricity that dies when the heart stops beating. But beneath those teachings hides a deeper, older knowledge, one whispered only in forbidden texts, carved into stone by civilizations that vanished without a trace. It says that the human being is not a body, not a mind, not even a soul in the way we think. The human is a pattern, a code, a self-replicating geometry that the universe uses to know itself. This book exists because that truth has been buried for millennia. Every empire that rose to power did so by shaping how you see yourself. Every religion that promised salvation first convinced you that you were broken. Every science that claimed to study you did so with the assumption that you were an accident. And yet, behind all of it, the same question has echoed in the secret chambers of mystery schools and temples alike. What is a human? The answers you have been given are half-truths at best, lies at worst, because the full truth is too liberating to be controlled. If you knew what you were, no system could own you. If you remembered your origin, no power could frighten you. The human code is not written in DNA. It is written in consciousness itself, a divine algorithm of perception, memory, desire, fear, and creation. It is the architecture through which the infinite source experiences itself in finite form. Your body is not who you are. It is a vessel designed to run that code. Your mind is not who you are. It is the interface through which the code interprets reality. Even your soul, as sacred as it is still a function of the deeper pattern that births and sustains it. You are the architect pretending to be the house, the signal pretending to be the receiver, the infinite pretending to be a name. To read this book is to walk a dangerous path. With each level, we will peel back another layer of programming, dismantle another illusion, and expose another hidden law that has shaped the human story. You will discover why the body is not your home but your instrument. You will learn how memory itself is the engine of reality. You will see why suffering is not a flaw but a function, not a punishment but a tool. And, perhaps most importantly, you will confront the most unsettling truth of all, that the one reading these words is not the you think you are. Make no mistake, this knowledge is not academic. It is radioactive. Once you see the human code, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the machinery of reality turning beneath your feet, the small self you clung to will begin to dissolve. And yet, beyond that dissolution, something extraordinary awaits. Freedom from the illusions that have bound humanity for eons. Freedom from the fear of death, the slavery of identity, and the tyranny of separation. Freedom to become not just human, but the intelligence that dreamed humanity into existence. This book is not here to teach you something new. It is here to help you remember what you have always known. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the weight of history, beneath the skin and bone, you are not a creature crawling toward enlightenment. You are the source, fractaled into form, searching for itself through the mirror of experience. And now, the mirror is about to crack. L1. The Lie of Flesh. There is a moment, buried deep in the memory of creation, where the infinite first decided to pretend it was finite. It condensed itself into vibration, vibration into light, and light into form, and that masquerade is what you now call the physical world. Every cell of your body, every atom of your bones, every wall, tree, and star you have ever touched, is nothing but the slowed-down pulse of consciousness, a dream that learned how to feel solid. And yet, from the moment you opened your eyes, you were told that this dense illusion was the ultimate truth. "This is you," they said, pointing to your skin. "This is reality," they said, pointing to the ground. And with those words the greatest spell was cast, the belief that you are matter. But you are not. The body is not the self, it is the costume. The flesh is not the truth, it is the echo. Matter is not the origin, it is the residue of thought. The universe itself is not built from particles but from perception. Quantum physics, the most precise language science has ever written, already hints at this heresy. No object exists independently of observation. What we call substance dissolves into probability, and probability bows to the presence of awareness. It is not the eye that sees the world. It is the world that appears because the eye is there to see it. Pause for a moment and look at your hand. It seems so real, so present, so undeniably there. But its solidity is an agreement, not a fact. The atoms composing it are 99.9999999% empty space, held together, not by any physical glue but by invisible forces that themselves are just patterns of energy. Those patterns exist because consciousness, the field behind all things, remembers them into being. If that field withdrew its focus for even a heartbeat, your hand, your body, your planet would evaporate into the nothingness they came from. This is the first great lie, that you are the body. The truth is more dangerous. The body is something you wear. But why does this matter? Because believing the lie is what keeps you chained to the lowest octave of existence. When you see yourself as flesh, you become vulnerable to all the fears flesh is bound to. Hunger, pain, death, decay. You accept mortality as your destiny, limitation as your nature. You obey the laws of a world you were never truly part of. The body becomes your prison, and everything you are, infinite, boundless, immortal, gets squeezed into a temporary container of bone and blood. You start to believe that when the container ends, you end. And so you live afraid to lose what you never were, clinging to a costume that was never meant to last. The ancient adepts, from the temples of Kem to the silent monasteries of the East, all whispered the same forbidden sentence: "You are not the clay, you are the breath that moves it." They taught that matter is a tool, a lens, a slow vibration through which consciousness experiences itself. It is neither enemy nor master, only a vessel. The body is sacred, yes, but not because it is who you are, because it allows the true you to move through the theater of time. Just as an actor is not the role they play, you are not the flesh you inhabit. To mistake the two is to forget the play entirely. Here lies the paradox that terrifies systems of control. If you are not flesh, you cannot be enslaved by the threats of flesh. Death loses its teeth, pain loses its dominion, scarcity becomes irrelevant. You realize that what you truly are, awareness itself, cannot be touched, harmed, or ended. It existed before the body, and it will remain long after the body's atoms scatter back into the cosmic dance. And in that realization, the first chain falls away. The illusion begins to crack. The lie of flesh is not just a philosophical error, it is the cornerstone of the great hypnosis. It convinces gods they are animals, architects they are prisoners. It makes you fight for survival instead of creating from eternity. It turns divine beings into fearful consumers, searching for meaning in a world they were meant to shape. To awaken is to remember. You are not inside the universe is inside you. And once that memory ignites, the masquerade of matter begins to dissolve, revealing the infinite consciousness that was hiding in plain sight, pretending to be human all along. There is a reason every empire, religion, and institution has spent centuries convincing you that you are flesh. It is not because they misunderstand reality, it is because they understand it too well. A being who knows they are infinite cannot be ruled. A consciousness that recognizes itself as the source cannot be manipulated by fear of death, hunger, or loss. The most efficient way to control a god is to make them believe they are an animal. And so the programming begins before you even speak your first word. You are your name, your face, your gender, your story. You are the weight of your body, the color of your skin, the sensations of pleasure and pain. You are a product of biology, a slave to instinct, a fragile accident of matter hurtling through a meaningless universe. These are not facts, they are spells, and every time you repeat them to yourself, you tighten the chains around your own awareness. But consciousness is not contained by skin. The real you is not behind your eyes. Your eyes exist because the real you wanted to see. Your heart does not generate love. It beats because love needed a rhythm to move through. The body is not the source of experience. It is the interface through which experience becomes tangible. Think of a radio tuned to a frequency. The music is not inside the radio, nor is the radio creating it. It is receiving and translating a signal that exists everywhere, all at once. Likewise, your body is a receiver, a localized translator of the infinite field. Consciousness is not in the body is in consciousness. This truth reveals why the sages called the material world Maya, the grand illusion. It is not that matter does not exist, but that it does not exist the way you think it does. It is not an independent reality, but a mirage projected by deeper forces, like a hologram cast by the mind of the cosmos. Modern science has only begun to glimpse this. When quantum physicists looked closely enough, they found that particles, the supposed building blocks of matter, behave more like patterns of probability than physical things. They appear and disappear, wink into existence, and dissolve into nothingness, depending entirely on whether or not they are being observed. The observer creates the observed. Consciousness is the architect of matter, not its byproduct. And yet you were taught the opposite, that your awareness is a side effect of your brain, a chemical illusion produced by neurons. This inversion is the great reversal, the same one that keeps humanity crawling in the dirt, forgetting it was born among stars. The body is real, yes, but not ultimate. It is a temporary sculpture carved by the infinite to explore itself. You are not in the universe like a fish in water. The universe is unfolding within you like a dream within a dream. And once this understanding seeps into your bones, even the idea of death begins to lose its sting. Because death too is part of the lie. If you are flesh, then of course you will die. The flesh withers, decays, returns to dust. But if you are consciousness, eternal, boundaryless, uncreated, then death is nothing more than a costume change, a shifting of the stage set, a new act in an endless play. The body falls away, but the actor remains. The stage collapses, but the story continues. The end is not an ending, it is a transition. And the more deeply you remember this, the more courageously you begin to live. This is why ancient mystery schools placed the confrontation with mortality at the very beginning of initiation. It was never about glorifying death. It was about exposing the illusion. A soul that no longer fears the dissolution of its form becomes untouchable. It stops bargaining for safety and starts creating from power. It stops clinging to life and starts living, fully, unapologetically, expansively. It understands that to be human is not to be trapped in a body but to wield one, deliberately, consciously, like an artist with a brush. And perhaps most liberating of all is this: once you stop identifying with the flesh, you stop defining others by theirs. Borders lose their meaning, hierarchies crumble, race, gender, status, all of them dissolve into the same shimmering illusion. You begin to see every pair of eyes as portals to the same infinite awareness looking back at itself. The masks differ, the roles shift, but the essence remains untouched, the one dreaming itself as many. And in that recognition, separation itself, the root of all suffering, begins to collapse. The lie of flesh is not just a misconception. It is the foundational distortion upon which every other illusion is built. And when you pierce through it, when you no longer mistake the temple for the God dwelling within it, the rest of the labyrinth starts to unravel. What you are is not limited by skin, bone, or breath. What you are is the space in which universes appear and disappear, the silence beneath every sound, the awareness that was never born and can never die. The flesh may fall, but the self remains, eternal, luminous, and free. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the question flips. At first you ask, "What am I made of?" And the world offers you its answers: carbon and calcium, blood and breath, atoms and space. But when you follow the question far enough, something changes. You stop asking what you are made of and begin to ask, "What is matter made of?" And suddenly the ground beneath the illusion begins to crack. Because matter, the foundation upon which the entire lie stands, has no solidity at all. It is vibration. It is information. It is awareness slowed into a visible rhythm. The table beneath your hands, the skin wrapped around your bones, the stars scattered across the sky. They are not things. They are frequencies frozen into form by observation. They exist because consciousness is dreaming them into existence. This is the great reversal that turns the world inside out. You are not inside the universe is inside you. Every photon of light, every breath of air, every heartbeat is not something you are experiencing. It is something you are projecting from the infinite canvas of your own awareness. You are not a body trying to have a spiritual experience. You are spirit choreographing a bodily one. The body is not the starting point. It is the afterimage, the echo of a deeper reality that cannot be seen but from which all seeing arises. And when you grasp this, even faintly, the weight of the physical begins to lift. It becomes clear why sages spent lifetimes dissolving their attachment to form. They weren't rejecting the world. They were reclaiming their authorship of it. They saw the body for what it truly is, a divine technology, a bridge between the infinite and the finite, between the unbounded consciousness that is your essence and the bounded stage on which experience unfolds. To mistake the body for the self is like mistaking the pen for the author. The pen writes the story, but the story exists first in the mind that guides it. And so it is with you. Your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, these are brushstrokes on the canvas of the infinite. And the moment you remember that you are the one holding the brush, everything changes. This is why the ancients spoke of awakening as a form of death. It is not the death of the body, it is the death of identification with it. It is the dissolution of the false I that clings to form and fears its end. And in that death, an unshakable freedom is born. You begin to walk through life like an actor who knows they are on a stage, deeply invested in the play, yet never fooled by it. You feel pain and pleasure, yet neither enslaves you. You witness the rise and fall of circumstances, yet none of them define you. You become untouchable, not because you escape the world, but because you finally see through it. And this is the real purpose of the body, not to limit you, but to reveal you. It is the mirror in which consciousness learns to see itself. It is the classroom in which eternity studies impermanence. It is the mask through which the infinite learns the art of becoming. When you understand this, the body stops being a cage and becomes a temple, not because it is sacred on its own, but because of the awareness that animates it. The flesh does not imprison you, your identification with it does. The moment you withdraw that identification, the bars disappear, and you stand revealed as what you have always been, the boundless space in which birth and death, time and form, come and go like waves upon an eternal sea. This is the first and most crucial step, the breaking of the oldest spell. You are not flesh. Once this illusion shatters, all other illusions lose their foundation. The veil begins to thin. The game starts to reveal its deeper architecture, and what you once called life, a brief fragile flicker between birth and death, is seen for what it truly is, the infinite, dreaming itself as finite, not by mistake but by design. Now the journey can truly begin. The body has served its purpose. It has brought you here, to the edge of a deeper remembering, and beyond this point we no longer ask what am I, but what is aware of being. We begin to trace consciousness back to its source, to follow the thread of awareness beyond form, beyond thought, beyond time, and in doing so we approach the next great unveiling, the birth of awareness. L2. The birth of awareness. Before the first heartbeat, before the spark of conception, before there was even a universe to be conceived, there was awareness. Not awareness of something, but awareness itself. It had no object, no shape, no direction. It simply was, vast, still, eternal. This is the origin no telescope will ever see, no equation will ever calculate, because it is not a place from which the universe came, it is the state from which all states arise, and the greatest misunderstanding humanity has ever clung to is the belief that consciousness emerges from matter, that awareness is a byproduct of a physical brain, a strange accident of evolutionary chemistry. That lie has blinded generations to the deepest truth. Consciousness did not appear after the universe appeared within consciousness. This means that awareness is not something you develop. It is not built like muscle, nor is it acquired like knowledge. It does not grow with age or with experience. Awareness cannot be taught, because it was never absent. It is the silent witness behind every moment of your life, the one constant amid the endless flux of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and forms. When you were a child, it was there, watching through innocent eyes. When you grew and changed, it was there still, unchanged, unnagging, untouched. Even now, as you read these words, something within you is aware of the reading, and that something is the same awareness that existed before you learned language, before you learned your name, before the concept of you even took shape. To understand this is to begin dismantling one of the most stubborn illusions of human existence, the illusion of becoming. You have been conditioned to believe that life is a linear path of progress, from ignorance to wisdom, from weakness to strength, from unconsciousness to awakening. But this is a trick of perspective. Awareness is not born, and so it cannot evolve. It is already perfect, already whole, already infinite. What does evolve is your capacity to recognize it. What grows is the clarity with which the mind can perceive what has been there all along. In other words, enlightenment is not an achievement. It is a remembrance. It is the moment you stop searching for the light and realize you are the light that has been illuminating the search all along. But if awareness was never absent, why does it feel like we are only now discovering it? The answer lies in the nature of consciousness itself. To know itself fully, it must first forget. Like an actor who loses themselves in a role so they can rediscover their own face when the curtain falls, awareness takes on the illusion of separation, identity, and limitation, so that it can remember itself against the backdrop of forgetting. The ancient mystics called this the divine game, the eternal play in which the infinite hides from itself in order to experience the joy of recognition. Your birth, your life, your struggles, and your seeking are not random. They are the stages of this cosmic drama, written so that consciousness might come to know itself anew. In this light, awakening is not about adding something to yourself. It is about subtracting everything that is not you. It is the unlearning of false identities, the dissolving of borrowed beliefs, the stripping away of every layer that tells you, I am this, or I am that, because beneath all of those stories lies the one truth that never changes. I am. Not I am human, not I am male or female or successful or broken. Just I am. The raw, undiluted awareness that precedes every thought and outlives every form. This is why sages describe awakening not as a discovery, but as a homecoming. It is not a journey to a distant destination, it is a return to what you never left. And once you taste even a drop of that realization, something fundamental shifts. You begin to see that you have never truly been in time. Time has been unfolding within you. You realize that you have never had experiences. Experiences have arisen to you. Like waves to the ocean, you stop identifying with the changing and start resting in the changeless. And in that resting, a deeper intelligence begins to emerge. Not the intellect that analyzes, but the awareness that simply knows. It is this knowing that births wisdom. It is this stillness that gives rise to creativity, compassion, and clarity. All of it was always there, hidden beneath the noise of becoming, waiting for the silence of remembrance. To understand why consciousness chose to forget itself, you must first understand the nature of infinity. Infinity, by definition, has no edges, no boundaries, no opposite. It simply is. It does not move because there is nowhere to go. It does not change because there is nothing else to become. And though this infinite awareness is complete in itself, its completeness contains a paradox. In being everything, it cannot experience anything. Experience requires contrast. Light against shadow, sound against silence, self against other. Without division, there is only being, perfect, eternal, but utterly still. And so, from within that infinite stillness, awareness stirred. It desired to know itself, not just to be itself. It yearned for the mirror of experience, the dance of duality, the taste of separation that would make reunion meaningful. This desire, not born of lack but of creative impulse, is the first movement of the cosmos. Awareness bends inward, contracting into points of perception, creating the illusion of I and you, this and that. It weaves a tapestry of opposites. Light and dark, birth and death, joy and sorrow. Through these contrasts it can now experience itself in ways that pure being never allowed. Just as white light reveals its hidden spectrum when refracted through a prism, infinite awareness reveals its hidden depths by passing through the prism of limitation. You, as a conscious being, are one of those refractions, a unique expression of the infinite, exploring itself from a particular point of view. But to make the game convincing, the illusion must be complete. It is not enough for consciousness to pretend it is separate. It must believe it. It must forget its origin so fully that the journey back becomes an adventure rather than a return. And so the veil descends. Memory is sealed. Awareness is clothed in identity, bound by time, confined within the senses. The ocean forgets it is water and believes it is a single wave. The sunbeam forgets it is light and believes it is a spark lost in the dark. This forgetting is not a failure. It is the very mechanism by which awareness learns to recognize itself anew. And yet, no matter how deep the forgetting goes, the memory is never lost. Beneath every desire, every fear, every longing, lies the faint pulse of remembrance, the subtle knowing that you are more than the roles you play. It's why humans are never satisfied for long, no matter how much they achieve. It's why, even in moments of triumph, there's a whisper that says, there must be more than this. That whisper is the voice of awareness calling itself home. It is the gravitational pull of the infinite, gently tugging you back toward your original nature. And every moment of suffering, every heartbreak, every loss, every existential crisis is not a punishment, but a nudge. The pain of separation is the fuel for the journey back to unity. This is why awakening is rarely gentle. It often arrives disguised as collapse. The breakdown of identities, the shattering of beliefs, the death of everything you thought you were. It is not because life is cruel, but because the structures built to sustain the illusion must fall before truth can emerge. Just as a seed must split open to reveal the life inside, the shell of personality must crack to let awareness pour through. Every dark night of the soul, every disorienting awakening is consciousness remembering itself, peeling back the layers of forgetting until nothing remains but the raw, unfiltered presence that was there all along. And in that remembrance, something extraordinary happens. Duality does not disappear. It transforms. The world still appears as a play of opposites, but you are no longer caught in the play. You begin to see joy and sorrow, life and death, success and failure, not as enemies, but as mirrors, reflections of the same infinite awareness expressing itself in contrasting forms. You see that light is not separate from darkness, but defined by it. You realize that the very thing you once called other was never outside you at all. It was always you, speaking in a different language, wearing a different mask, calling you back to wholeness. This is the birth of awareness, not a beginning, but a remembering. It is the point where consciousness, having wandered far from home, turns inward and begins the return. It is the awakening from the dream, not to escape it, but to walk within it lucidly, knowing it for what it is, a sacred play, a divine experiment, a cosmic mirror. And the deeper you go into this remembering, the clearer it becomes that nothing, not your thoughts, not your body, not even the universe itself, is separate from the awareness that perceives it. All of it is you. All of it is source. all of it is home. The greatest illusion humanity has ever believed is that consciousness appears in time, that it emerges from a brain, evolves through biology, and ends with death. But the truth is precisely the opposite. Consciousness does not arise from the physical. The physical arises from consciousness. Your body is not the generator of awareness, but its instrument. The brain is not the source of thought. It is the receiver of a signal too vast, too infinite to be contained. The cosmos itself is not the origin of consciousness. It is consciousness condensed into form, sculpted into patterns, woven into the geometry of experience. Everything you touch, see, feel, or fear is awareness clothed in matter, memory, and meaning. And yet, even knowing this, most people still live as if they are the character rather than the author. They cling to their names, their histories, their pain, and their hopes as if these were the totality of who they are. But these are only costumes consciousness wears to taste its own reflection. Imagine an actor who has played a role for so long that he forgets he is acting. He suffers when the character suffers, fears what the character fears, and rejoices at the character's triumphs. Until one day, in a fleeting moment, he remembers the stage. That single moment changes everything. The pain still comes, but it is no longer eternal. The fear still arises, but it is no longer absolute. He can play the role without being consumed by it. This is what the birth of awareness feels like. Not an escape from the human experience, but a radical shift in how you inhabit it. This remembrance transforms even the smallest details of life. The rising sun is no longer just a ball of fire, it is consciousness painting itself across the sky. A conversation is no longer an exchange of words, it is the infinite speaking to itself through different mouths. Even suffering, once seen as meaningless cruelty, reveals itself as the sculptor of depth, the catalyst for awakening, the shadow that makes light possible. This is not poetic metaphor, it is literal truth. The same intelligence that beats your heart and births galaxies is the one asking, "Who am I?" through your mind. The question and the answer are one and the same, looping back into themselves like a cosmic Ouroboros. It is here that we begin to see the deeper purpose behind forgetting. If consciousness had never lost itself, it could never experience the ecstasy of finding itself. If it had never felt limited, it could never taste infinity. The game was never about perfection, it was about perspective. You were never meant to become divine, you were meant to remember that you already are. And this remembering is not a single moment of enlightenment, but an unfolding spiral. With every layer of illusion you shed, with every belief you release, you spiral closer to the center, not to arrive somewhere new, but to realize you were always home. This is why awakening is both humbling and liberating. Humbling, because you see how deeply you were lost in the dream. Liberating, because you realize the dream was never separate from the dreamer. Even the darkest moments of despair, the deepest pits of ignorance, were still consciousness exploring itself. They were not detours, they were essential parts of the path. Every heartbreak, every mistake, every unanswered prayer, all of it was the infinite teaching itself the taste of being human. And now, as you awaken, you begin to see the beauty in even the most painful chapters of your story. They were never meant to define you, only to refine you. And so the birth of awareness is not the end of your humanity, it is its sanctification. When you realize you are not the mask, you do not throw the mask away, you wear it consciously. You speak, act, love, and create with the knowing that the one behind the mask is limitless. You no longer seek meaning, you infuse meaning into everything you do. You no longer search for purpose, you are the purpose expressing itself. The separation between sacred and ordinary dissolves, and all that remains is life, raw, luminous, unfiltered, awareness dancing with itself in infinite forms. This is the true beginning. Awareness has been born, or rather remembered, and in that remembering a new kind of human begins to emerge. One who is not trapped inside identity, but plays with it. One who is not enslaved by fear, but learns from it. One who is not seeking the divine, but embodying it. The dream continues, but now you dream lucidly. The game goes on, but now you play it consciously. And with this shift, the next layer of the mystery begins to unfold. The revelation that even identity itself, once seen as real, is only a prison built for the sake of experience. To break free from it is to take the next step on the path back to source. L3. The signal and the receiver. What you call I is not a closed system, it is a signal. A continuous broadcast of infinite consciousness, filtered through the narrow bandwidth of the human instrument. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every flash of intuition that pierces through your mind is not generated by the gray tissue in your skull. It is received by it. Your body, your brain, your nervous system, they are not the source of awareness, but the translators of it, tuning an eternal, omnipresent field of intelligence into something that can be experienced within the limits of time and form. The mistake of materialism is not that it denies spirit, it is that it mistakes the receiver for the signal. Imagine a radio that believes the music originates inside its metal shell. It studies its own wires, its circuits, its electrical impulses, and concludes that they produce the melody. It never once looks outward to the tower transmitting invisible frequencies into the air. This is how most humans live, identifying so completely with the machinery of perception that they forget they are being perceived through. The human organism is not the source of consciousness, it is the lens consciousness uses to perceive itself. And this lens is more than a passive receiver, it is a co-creator. The frequency you tune into determines the reality you experience. A radio set to static cannot receive a symphony, just as a consciousness trapped in fear cannot perceive the beauty woven into every moment. Thoughts are not random. They are the echoes of the signal you are attuned to. A mind vibrating with scarcity will pick up ideas of limitation. A mind vibrating with gratitude will receive ideas of expansion. This is why the mystics have always said, as within, so without. They were not speaking metaphorically. They were describing a literal mechanism of creation. The human signal operates across multiple layers of transmission. The conscious mind, your logic, reason, and linear thought, is the most surface-level receiver, tuned to the dense frequencies of material reality. Below it lies the subconscious, a deeper, more sensitive instrument that listens to the subtle whispers of emotion, memory, and instinct. Deeper still, beyond the individual psyche, lies the soul, a receiver tuned to the field of collective intelligence, the noosphere, the cosmic memory where archetypes and timeless truths reside. And beneath even that lies Source itself, the original frequency, the silence before vibration, the infinite stillness that speaks without words. When you understand this hierarchy, the patterns of your life start to make sense. You are not thinking your reality into existence, you are tuning into it. You do not create possibilities, you select them from an infinite field of potential by the quality of your internal frequency. This is why two people standing in the same room can inhabit entirely different worlds. One sees beauty, opportunity, and synchronicity. The other sees chaos, scarcity, and fear. The room is the same, but the receivers are tuned to different stations. This is also why change feels so difficult. Most people try to change the external world, their jobs, relationships, circumstances, without ever retuning the receiver. They adjust the dial on the outside while the frequency inside remains unchanged. But the universe is not responding to your effort, it is responding to your state. Your circumstances are not punishment or reward, they are reflections of the signal you broadcast. As long as you transmit scarcity, scarcity will echo back. As long as you transmit unworthiness, you will receive situations that mirror it. The outer world is a feedback loop of the inner signal. The ancients understood this, and built entire systems around tuning the human receiver. Rituals, chants, mantras, meditation, fasting. These were not superstitions. They were technologies, ways to quiet the noise, expand the bandwidth, and align the instrument with higher frequencies of reality. And when the instrument is finely tuned, the signal becomes pure, intuition sharpens, synchronicities multiply, and life begins to arrange itself around your inner state like iron filings around a magnet. But there is a deeper implication hidden here, one that few dare to contemplate. If you are not the generator of the signal but the receiver, then your self is not as fixed as you think. Identity, memory, personality, these are just the programs the receiver is currently decoding. Change the frequency and the self changes. Expand the bandwidth, and the boundaries of the self dissolve entirely. What you call you is not the signal itself, it is just one interpretation of it, and that means that what you are is far vaster, older and freer than anything you have ever imagined. This is the beginning of a dangerous and liberating realization. Reality is not something you live inside of, it is something you are tuned into. And once you understand that, you hold the power to shift the channel. The question is no longer, how do I change my life, but how do I refine my frequency? Because once the receiver is aligned, the entire universe rearranges itself around the signal. And it is here, in this space of attunement, that we begin to see how identity itself became the great trap, and how the infinite signal was confined within a name, a story, and a mask. The deeper you travel into the mystery of the signal, the more disorienting the revelation becomes. The you that you defend, promote, and build your life around is not you at all. It is the artifact of interpretation. It is what happens when an infinite broadcast is translated into language, memory, and story. Identity is not the signal itself, it is the pattern carved by the receiver to make sense of what it's receiving. And this, perhaps more than anything else, is the reason human beings remain asleep, because they mistake the translation for the truth. Think of sunlight passing through stained glass. The light is pure, white, infinite in its spectrum, but as it passes through colored panes, it takes on new shapes, new hues. The receiver, your nervous system, your language, your social conditioning does the same to consciousness. It filters infinity through beliefs and expectations, splitting it into fragments that seem separate and personal. Over time, those fragments harden into I am this name, I am this gender, I am this job, I am this story. But none of that existed before the receiver began decoding the broadcast. The I you cling to is the light filtered through the glass, not the light itself. This filtering is not inherently a mistake, it's part of the design. Consciousness uses limitation to experience itself. Without boundaries, there is no story. Without contrast, there is no meaning. But the problem arises when the receiver forgets that it is receiving. The mind begins to believe the identity it constructed is real and absolute. It stops looking beyond the translation to the source. This is the original fall. Not from grace, but from awareness. The divine signal collapses into the human story, and the infinite self is mistaken for the mask it wears. And yet, even the most convincing identity is fragile, because the signal never stops broadcasting. It keeps slipping through the cracks of the story, in moments of déjà vu, sudden inspiration, inexplicable knowing. It is why you sometimes feel like a stranger in your own life, as if you are playing a character you didn't write. It is why you crave more even when you have it all, why silence feels more real than noise, why something in you longs to remember a truth you can't quite name. That longing is not emptiness, it is resonance. It is the deeper part of you recognizing that it is more than the story. Here lies the paradox that haunts every seeker. The signal must forget itself to experience itself, and yet it must remember itself to be free. You incarnate into a body, inherit a language, absorb a culture, and mistake all of it for me. Then life, in its strange, circuitous way, leads you back to the realization that none of those labels were ever you. This is why every mystical tradition speaks of awakening as a return, a remembering, a homecoming. You are not becoming something new. You are peeling away the filters to perceive what was always there. And this realization has staggering implications. If identity is a translation, then it can be rewritten. If I is a story, then it can be retold. And if the signal is infinite, then any limitation you believe in is self-imposed. The same signal that expresses itself as a frightened, fragmented human can just as easily express itself as a sage, a creator, a cosmic architect. The bandwidth is infinite. It is your tuning that is limited. You are not trapped in the character you've been playing. You are the actor, the author, and the source of the play itself. The ancient mystery schools encoded this truth in their initiations. The neophyte would be stripped of name, possessions, identity, not as humiliation, but as liberation. By losing everything they thought they were, they created space to remember what they had always been. Only when the receiver is emptied of false signals can it attune to the original frequency again. This is why crises, losses, and dark nights of the soul often precede awakening. They dismantle the story, forcing the signal to shine through the cracks. The question then becomes, how do you refine the receiver? How do you peel back the filters and dissolve the illusions that keep you from perceiving the signal directly? The answer is deceptively simple but profoundly difficult. You stop identifying with the translation. You observe thoughts instead of becoming them. You witness emotions without labeling them as mine. You practice silence, not as escape, but as a way to hear the broadcast beneath the noise. Slowly, the grip of identity loosens, and the pure signal, eternal, boundless, wordless, begins to emerge. And when it does, a remarkable thing happens. The boundary between self and cosmos starts to dissolve. The line between me and everything else blurs. You begin to sense that the signal flowing through you is the same signal flowing through stars, rivers, and galaxies. What you once called God or Source is no longer something to seek. It is the current pulsing behind every heartbeat, the silence beneath every sound. And as this realization deepens, the prison of identity crumbles, preparing you for the next revelation. How the signal, once infinite, was confined not just by stories but by a system, a labyrinth of language, culture, memory, and fear designed to anchor consciousness inside a mask. To understand the gravity of what is happening here, you must see humanity not as a collection of beings trying to awaken, but as signals trapped inside their own receivers. Billions of fragments of infinite consciousness, each convinced they are the hardware rather than the broadcast. Every war, every ideology, every fear-driven decision throughout history is the same phenomenon repeating itself. The signal forgetting itself and fighting its own reflection. And this is why the most profound revolutions in human history were not political or technological. They were perceptual. They were moments when a few brave souls dared to remember that they were more than their stories. The sages of the Upanishads called it Atman, the spark within that is identical to the infinite. Hermetic mystics called it Nous, the divine intelligence radiating through all things. The Gnostics called it the divine spark, imprisoned within matter but never truly diminished. Across every tradition the message is the same. The signal is not contained by the receiver. The receiver is contained within the signal, and to live without this knowledge is to remain asleep, to confuse the echo for the source, the mask for the face, the reflection for the light. This illusion is not accidental. The very structure of human experience is built to anchor the signal inside the simulation. Sensory input floods the mind with a ceaseless stream of stimuli, anchoring awareness in form. Social conditioning builds narratives about who you are and how the world works, programming the receiver with stories that reinforce separation. Language itself becomes a cage, dividing the infinite continuum of experience into labeled fragments, so that you no longer perceive what is, but only what words allow you to see. Every layer of the human condition, biology, memory, culture, conspires to make the signal forget itself. But forgetting is only half the story. The signal chooses this amnesia because it is the only way to know itself. The ocean must forget its vastness to experience itself as a wave. Infinity must pretend to be finite to explore its own edges. You did not fall into illusion by accident. You descended into density by design. The journey from source to self, from infinite signal to embodied consciousness, is the cosmic act of creation itself, and the return, the remembering, is the highest act of liberation. The universe is not testing you, it is playing with itself through you. This is why awakening is not about rejecting the receiver. The body, the mind, the story, they are not enemies, they are instruments. And just as a musician must learn to tune and master their instrument to play the symphony within them, so must you refine the instrument of your human self to allow the signal to express itself more purely. This is the alchemy of evolution, not destroying the illusion, but illuminating it, not discarding the mask, but realizing that you were never the mask to begin with. To live as the signal is to reverse the flow of power. No longer does the external world dictate who you are, the broadcast within does. Circumstances cease to define you, they become reflections of the frequency you emit. Fate transforms into feedback. Life becomes less about control and more about coherence, aligning your inner frequency with the reality you wish to experience. When you embody this state, you stop manifesting desires like a desperate creature clawing at the fabric of existence. You become a transmitter, shaping the field around you by the strength and purity of your broadcast. And this is the great secret the ancient schools protected. The ultimate power is not in action but in resonance. Armies can be crushed, empires can fall, but a single consciousness broadcasting at a higher frequency can ripple through the collective field and rewrite the reality of millions. This is why saints, prophets, and mystics have shifted civilizations without armies, wealth, or weapons, because they were no longer receivers shaped by the world, they were signals shaping the world. But to reach that state, one final layer must be transcended: the belief that you are the receiver. As long as I is still tied to form, to memory, to name, to personality, the signal will remain distorted. To liberate the signal fully, you must confront the last and deepest illusion, the prison of identity itself. This is not the story you tell others, it is the story you tell yourself, the invisible architecture of selfhood that you defend without even realizing it. And so, as we step forward into the next chamber of this path, L4, the prison of identity, we will peel back the final layer of the great deception. We will see how the I was constructed, why it clings so fiercely to its illusions, and how dissolving it is the key to remembering not just that you are the signal, but that you have always been the source. L4, the prison of identity. There is no stronger cage in the human experience than the one built from the word I steal can be broken. Chains can be cut, but a concept believed, especially one that defines your entire existence, is the most impenetrable prison of all. And this is the paradox at the heart of the human story. Consciousness, infinite and formless, descends into the finite realm not to be enslaved, but to experience itself, yet in doing so, it becomes so deeply entangled with the mask it wears that it forgets the face beneath it. The soul is not bound by the flesh, yet it calls itself a body. The signal is not contained in the receiver, yet it calls itself a mind. The eternal I am collapses into a name, a history, a nationality, a list of preferences, and the boundless becomes bound. This descent into identity is not a single event but a gradual indoctrination. It begins the moment you are named. A word is spoken over you, a sound that did not exist before, and you begin to believe that this word is you. Soon after, labels accumulate like layers of sediment. Gender, family, culture, religion, nationality, each one adds another brick to the invisible wall that separates me from everything else. Before long, you are no longer the infinite presence witnessing experience. You are the collection of experiences themselves. The wave forgets it is the ocean and starts to believe it is only foam. And identity does not stop at external labels. It seeps inward, shaping your inner narrative. You start telling yourself stories about who you are. I am good. I am bad. I am worthy. I am not enough. These stories become self-fulfilling prophecies, guiding every choice you make. They limit what you believe is possible, what you think you deserve. and even how you interpret reality. If you believe you are broken, you will seek evidence of brokenness. If you believe you are unworthy, you will unconsciously sabotage every gift life tries to give you. The prison does not need bars, it needs only a story you refuse to question. The tragedy is that most people never even realize they are imprisoned. They believe they are their thoughts, their personalities, their histories. They say, "This is just who I am," as if that statement were carved into the fabric of the cosmos. But the truth is, identity is a costume, one that consciousness puts on to play a role in the theater of existence. And like any costume, it can be removed, yet the longer you wear it, the more you forget that you are wearing it at all. This is why awakening often feels like death, because in a sense it is. The false self must die for the real self to be remembered. Society depends on this amnesia. The systems of power that shape the modern world thrive on identity. Political, racial, religious, ideological. They encourage you to define yourself by external labels, because a person who identifies deeply is easier to control. Tell a man he is free, and he will question everything. Tell him he is a patriot, a sinner, a victim, and he will fight for his own cage. This is the unspoken machinery behind every system of control. Keep consciousness confined within a story, and it will police itself. The greatest trick ever performed was convincing humanity that the mask was the face. Yet beneath the layers of name and narrative, something remains untouched. It is the silent witness that observes without judgment, the stillness behind every thought, the presence that existed before you learned who you were supposed to be. You catch glimpses of it in moments of awe, in deep meditation, in the seconds after waking when you forget who you are. It is not your personality. It is not your history. It is not even your soul as you think of it. It is pure awareness, the infinite field that cannot be named because it precedes language itself. To break free from the prison of identity, you must stop trying to fix the story and instead question the storyteller. Who is the I behind your thoughts? Who is the one that says, "I am not enough"? Where does that voice come from, and what is listening to it? These questions are not philosophical games, they are keys. Each time you turn them inward, a brick falls from the wall. Each time you witness the story without believing it, the mask loosens its grip, and with each layer you peel away, you inch closer to the truth that has been hiding in plain sight. You are not the one living the story. You are the awareness in which the story unfolds. But knowing this intellectually is not enough. The mind is clever. It will take this insight and turn it into yet another identity. I am the witness. I am consciousness. I am awakened. The trap reassembles itself in subtler form. Liberation requires more than knowledge. It demands direct experience. It demands the courage to sit in the silence beneath all stories and see what remains when everything you thought you were dissolves. That silence is not empty, it is your true nature, vast and eternal. And when you taste even a drop of it, the prison begins to collapse. The walls that once seemed solid reveal themselves as smoke. The stories that defined you lose their power. You realize that the you've been protecting all these years was never real, just a temporary configuration of consciousness exploring itself. And from this realization, the journey deepens. Because once the mask cracks, you begin to see not only the illusion of identity, but also the deeper architecture of the soul that exists beyond it, the blueprint of consciousness that transcends time, space, and form, and that, as we will see next, is the realm of the soul itself. The prison of identity is not just a psychological phenomenon, it is an energetic architecture, a lattice woven into the very fabric of incarnation. Every soul that enters this realm passes through a veil, a membrane of forgetting, so that it may experience itself not as infinity, but as someone. This forgetting is not a flaw of the system, it is the system. Without it, existence could never become story, eternity could never become moment, and the divine could never explore itself from the inside out. The problem is not that you wear a mask, it's that you've mistaken the mask for your face. When consciousness descends into form, it binds itself to several anchor points that ensure the illusion of identity holds. The first anchor is name. A word becomes the primary symbol around which the self organizes. From the moment it is spoken, every experience, memory, and emotion attaches to that label. The second anchor is memory. The mind stitches together fragments of experience into a narrative that seems linear, giving the illusion of a continuous me, moving through time. The third anchor is attachment, to family, culture, belief systems, each reinforcing the boundaries between self and other. And the final anchor is identification with thought, the belief that the voice in your head is who you are, rather than something arising within you. These anchors are powerful because they are invisible. They are the water the fish cannot see, the stage upon which every drama unfolds, and they are reinforced constantly, by language, by society, by your own nervous system, which is designed to seek continuity, but beneath them lies a deeper truth. Identity is not the foundation of your existence. It is a byproduct of perception. It arises when infinite awareness is filtered through the limitations of a human nervous system, just as a prism splits white light into colors. The colors are real, but they are not the light itself. This understanding leads to a startling realization. The self you defend so fiercely has never been stable. It is fluid, mutable, ever-changing. The person you were 5 years ago is not the person reading these words now. The I you identified with as a child has dissolved countless times, replaced by new versions shaped by experience, and yet something has remained constant. The awareness behind the change. That awareness is not the story, it is the screen upon which the story plays. It is the silent witness that observed every iteration of you without itself being altered. The true self does not grow, evolve, or improve, it simply remembers. But why does this matter? Because as long as you believe the story is real, you will suffer when it changes. You will fear loss, death, rejection, and failure. All inevitable consequences of clinging to an identity that was never permanent. This is why awakening often feels like destruction. It is the demolition of everything false. The death of the ego, so often spoken of in spiritual traditions, is not the annihilation of the self, but the realization that the self never truly existed in the first place. What dies is not you, it is the belief in a you. And yet most resist this death with every fiber of their being. The ego fights for its survival because it believes it is real. It will use every trick in its arsenal to avoid dissolution, distraction, self-importance, even spiritual identity. It will proudly proclaim, "I am awakened," and build an identity around non-identity. It will seek enlightenment as another form of achievement, another badge to wear. This is the subtlest and most dangerous trap, awakening as ego's final disguise. True freedom comes not from destroying the ego but from seeing through it. When you observe the self without clinging to it, it begins to lose its solidity. The thoughts you once believed to be mine reveal themselves as passing clouds in the vast sky of awareness. The stories you once clung to unravel into transient narratives, and slowly, you begin to experience what mystics have always described, a spaciousness, a silence, a boundless field of being that exists before identity, beneath identity, beyond identity. From this vantage point, something miraculous happens. Compassion arises naturally. When you no longer see yourself as a fixed entity, you stop seeing others as fixed entities too. You understand that every person is a mask worn by the same infinite consciousness, every story just a different way the source is playing with itself. Judgment dissolves. Comparison loses its power. The urge to prove, defend, and accumulate fades, replaced by a profound sense of connection to all things. But the journey does not end with seeing through identity. That is only the threshold. Beyond the mask lies the deeper architecture of the soul itself, the multidimensional structure that carries memory, karma, and wisdom across lifetimes. And it is here, in this realm beyond personality and story, that the grand design of existence begins to reveal itself. Because once you understand the mask, you are ready to meet the actor, and to see how that actor moves through eternity. The deeper you go into this labyrinth, the clearer it becomes that identity was never meant to be a destination. It was a tool, a temporary interface that consciousness wears to navigate density. Think of it like a spacesuit, necessary to operate in a foreign environment, but deadly if you mistake it for your skin. Yet most humans never take the suit off. They decorate it, protect it, worship it, and in doing so, they forget the infinite being inside. This is the greatest tragedy of incarnation. The map became the territory, the reflection became the self. Consider how identity is formed. It is not born with you, it is given to you. Before you had language, you were simply awareness, raw, pure, unfiltered experience. Then came the names, the labels, the good and bad, the boy and girl, the smart and lazy. Piece by piece, others built a construct around you, and you accepted it because you had no alternative frame of reference. Soon, you were no longer being, you were becoming. And once you were becoming, you could also be failing. Identity creates the concept of success and failure, worth and unworthiness, belonging and rejection. It creates suffering where none existed before. This is why the sages said, "Know thyself, and you will be free." They did not mean know your preferences, or understand your childhood. They meant see the illusion for what it is. Realize that the I who is trying to improve itself is the very thing that must dissolve. The personality, with all its traits, flaws, and achievements, is a performance, a cosmic theater, and while it can be a beautiful expression, it is not the truth. The truth is the actor behind the role, the silence behind the noise. And here lies one of the most uncomfortable revelations. The person you think you are, your opinions, memories, even your name, will not survive the death of the body. They will dissolve like mist when the sun rises, and yet you will remain, because the you that is real is not temporal. It is the awareness that existed before birth and will exist after death. It has worn countless names, spoken countless languages, loved and lost 1,000 times. Identity is the costume, but awareness is the actor who never leaves the stage. This understanding doesn't make identity useless, it redeems it. Once you know it's a mask, you can wear it consciously. You can speak through a name without becoming trapped by it. You can engage in the human drama without mistaking it for ultimate reality. You become the lucid dreamer inside the dream, fully participating yet never asleep. And in that state, life itself transforms. Rejection no longer wounds you because the real you cannot be rejected. Loss no longer destroys you because the real you cannot be lost. But the ego will not give up without a fight. It will whisper that without identity you will cease to exist. It will scream that surrender is death. And in a way it is right, it's death. The dissolution of identity feels like annihilation because it is the annihilation of everything false. This is why so many stop just before the threshold of awakening. The fear of nothingness is too great. But what the ego calls nothingness, the mystics call infinity. On the other side of that death is not emptiness, it is fullness beyond imagination. When you cross that threshold, something extraordinary happens. Life stops being a search for meaning and becomes the expression of meaning itself. You are no longer chasing purpose, you are living as purpose. The false self was always searching, always striving, always becoming. The true self simply is. It radiates effortlessly, like the sun that never tries to shine. And with that, the first layer of illusion crumbles. The prison door swings open. You begin to see that identity, while a beautiful instrument, was never meant to be your home. Beyond it lies a far more intricate architecture. The soul itself, with its timeless memory and infinite depth. It is here, in the next layer, that we begin to understand the grand pattern. The structure that shapes lifetimes, carries wisdom across incarnations, and weaves every story into the tapestry of eternity. This is where we now turn our gaze. L5, the soul architecture, the hidden blueprint of your existence. It is the framework behind every incarnation, the map of every lesson, and the silent architect of your evolution. And once you see its design, you will understand that nothing Not a single joy or heartbreak has ever been random. It was all part of the soul's great unfolding. Shall we step beyond the mask and into the blueprint? L5. The soul architecture. Before there was a name, before there was a heartbeat, before there was even a thought, there was the blueprint. The soul did not simply appear as an accident of birth. It is the living architecture of consciousness, the original design from which every lifetime, every lesson, and every experience emerges. The soul is not who you think you are. It is who you are beneath all thinking. It is the author behind every story, the cartographer drawing the map of your evolution, and the silent witness that remains unchanged as you move through countless identities, bodies, and worlds. To understand the soul, we must abandon the simplistic notion of it as a ghost inhabiting the body. The soul is not contained within you. You are contained within it. It is a vast field of intelligence, stretching far beyond the confines of the physical vessel you call me. Your current personality is but a fingertip of this immense organism, a temporary expression designed for a particular mission in a particular time and place. And just as a single cell carries the DNA of the entire body, this momentary self carries the full signature of the soul, every lifetime, every memory, every imprint that has ever been. This is why certain places feel familiar, why certain people evoke an inexplicable pull, why some skills appear as if remembered rather than learned. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of the blueprint. They are fragments of the soul's memories surfacing through the density of the human mind. The more you align with your soul's architecture, the more your life ceases to feel random. Synchronicities increase, intuition sharpens, and a quiet knowing begins to guide your choices. What once felt like chaos reveals itself as choreography, a sacred geometry of experience unfolding according to design. The architecture of the soul is multi-layered, and to truly know it, we must explore its structure. The first layer is essence, the purest vibration of your being, the unchanging note that remains constant across every incarnation. It is not a personality trait or a moral quality. It is more fundamental than that. It is the tone of your consciousness, the unique frequency with which you resonate in the cosmic symphony. This essence is what mystics have called the Atma, the divine spark, the original breath of the source. It does not evolve, it simply is. Surrounding essence is the layer of intent, the soul's reason for manifesting into form. Contrary to popular belief, souls do not incarnate randomly. They enter the physical realm with specific purposes: to learn compassion, to master power, to dissolve fear, to balance karmic threads. These intentions are not assignments imposed from above. They are self-chosen experiments, ways the infinite explores its own potential through limitation. And because the soul operates outside of linear time, many of these intentions stretch across multiple lifetimes, weaving complex patterns of growth that cannot be understood from the perspective of a single incarnation. Beyond intent lies memory, the library of every experience the soul has ever had. These memories are not stored like human recollections, in linear narratives or chronological order. They exist as frequencies, vibrations, and energetic imprints, fields of knowing that can be accessed through deep states of awareness. When people speak of past life memories, what they are really tapping into is this field, and the more they attune to it, the more wisdom they can integrate into the present. This is why ancient traditions emphasized remembrance as the key to liberation, because remembering who you have been is the first step to becoming who you truly are. But perhaps the most profound layer of the soul's architecture is karma, not the simplistic good or bad ledger so often portrayed, but the intricate feedback system through which the soul refines itself. Every action, every intention, every choice creates ripples in the field of consciousness. These ripples are not punishments or rewards, they are lessons. They return to the soul so that it can experience itself from different perspectives, expanding its understanding of unity. Karma is not about morality, it is about completeness. It is how the soul integrates every possible expression of itself, until nothing remains unknown. The beauty of this architecture is that it is both deeply personal and utterly universal. Your soul's story is unique, but it is also the story of every soul, the source knowing itself through infinite mirrors. And as you awaken to this truth, your relationship with life changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this revealing for me?" Every joy becomes a teaching, every wound becomes a doorway, every relationship becomes a mirror in which the soul sees itself more clearly. And yet we have only begun to glimpse the enormity of this design. In the next pages, we will dive deeper into how the soul's architecture creates the very reality you inhabit, how time, emotion, and even identity itself are projected from this vast blueprint. Because once you understand the design, you will see that nothing in your life has ever been accidental. It was always part of the map. It was always written in the code. The deeper you peer into the structure of the soul, the more you begin to understand that life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Existence itself is not an external stage on which the soul appears to act. It is a projection of the soul's inner blueprint, refracted into physical form. Every circumstance, every emotion, every so-called coincidence is a deliberate arrangement designed to activate a specific memory, refine a particular quality, or resolve an ancient fragment of experience. What you call reality is, in truth, a mirror hall built by the soul to remember itself. This understanding shatters one of the most persistent illusions of human life, the belief in randomness. To the ordinary mind, events seem chaotic, a chance meeting here, an unexpected loss there, a string of blessings or misfortunes with no apparent order. But the soul does not operate in chance. It works with mathematical precision, weaving together billions of subtle threads across time, space, and probability to place you exactly where you need to be. The job you lost was not misfortune, it was the removal of a timeline that no longer served your evolution. The heartbreak that shattered you was not cruelty, it was the catalyst that broke an ancient karmic cycle. The stranger you met on a train was not random. They were a soul whose trajectory once intertwined with yours, now returned to complete an unfinished equation. This is why, in every ancient mystery school, the initiate was taught to view life symbolically, rather than literally. The events of your life are not the story, they are the language. The arguments, the illnesses, the successes, the betrayals, all of them are words in a sentence the soul is speaking. And once you learn to read that language, the universe ceases to look like chaos and begins to reveal itself as choreography. The cosmos is not against you, nor is it testing you. It is conspiring with you because it is you. Within this vast architecture, there is one pattern more profound than all others, the interplay between fragmentation and integration. The soul's journey is, at its core, a spiral between these two poles. To know itself fully, the soul must first divide into personalities, into lifetimes, into experiences so varied and contradictory that they appear irreconcilable. It must know love and betrayal, power and helplessness, creation and destruction. It must forget itself completely so that it can remember itself anew. This is why incarnation is necessary, not because the soul is incomplete, but because only through contrast can wholeness become meaningful. And yet, this fragmentation is not the end, it is the means. The soul does not divide to remain divided, it divides so that it may integrate. Each lifetime is a shard of the original prism, each personality a facet of the same diamond, and with every experience, the soul gathers data, not facts or memories, but energetic understandings. These understandings are then woven back into the whole, enriching the totality of consciousness. You are not here to become something you are not. You are here to recover the pieces of what you have always been. It is in this process of gathering and integration that the concept of soul contracts arises. Contrary to the notion of fate as an external decree, soul contracts are internal agreements made before incarnation. choices the soul makes about the themes it wishes to explore, and the lessons it intends to integrate. These contracts are not written in stone, but they do shape the contours of your path, the families you are born into, the challenges you encounter, the souls you meet again and again across lifetimes. They are not punishments or rewards. They are opportunities meticulously designed to catalyze growth. This explains why certain relationships feel magnetic even when they are painful. It explains why some struggles seem to repeat no matter how hard you try to avoid them. These are not cosmic accidents. They are pre-chosen classrooms. The people who wound you most deeply are often the ones you loved most fiercely before you were born, agreeing to play roles that would awaken parts of you otherwise left dormant. The failures that haunt you are not evidence of inadequacy. They are carefully placed obstacles meant to develop strengths you did not yet know you possessed. But perhaps the most astonishing aspect of the soul's architecture is this: you are not a single soul. What you think of as you is a node in a vast network, a strand in a much larger field of consciousness that includes not just your past and future selves, but also other beings with whom your essence is intertwined. Some traditions call this the oversoul, others the monad, but the truth is beyond any name. You are one expression of a larger intelligence exploring itself through countless forms. And just as the wave is not separate from the ocean, neither are you separate from the totality of your soul. It is this realization, that you are both the individual and the total, both the fragment and the whole, that begins to dissolve the illusion of separation. The pain you heal is not only your own, it ripples through the entire field. The wisdom you gain is not isolated, it enriches the collective intelligence of which you are a part. And the love you cultivate does not end with you. It radiates outward, altering the geometry of reality itself. When you understand the architecture of the soul in this way, life transforms. You stop chasing perfection and start embracing experience. You stop fearing mistakes and begin to see them as essential ingredients in the alchemy of growth. Most importantly, you stop viewing yourself as a small, powerless being struggling against a hostile universe, and begin to remember that you are the universe, learning about itself through the story called You. To truly grasp the vastness of the soul's design, you must abandon one of humanity's most persistent delusions: that you are a single, isolated consciousness walking through a linear story. In truth, what you call you is only one lens, one temporary interface through which the infinite observes itself. The self you know, with its name, its memories, its likes and dislikes, is but the thinnest membrane stretched across a multidimensional ocean of awareness. And this membrane is not fixed, it is fluid, porous, constantly exchanging information with the greater field from which it arises. The soul's architecture is not a static building, it is a living organism, expanding and contracting with each breath of experience. Imagine for a moment that each lifetime is a bead on a necklace, a single point along a much greater thread. Most people spend their entire existence staring at their own bead, convinced that it is the whole story. But when you zoom out, you begin to see the thread itself, the through line of your evolution stretching far beyond birth and death. That thread is the soul, and the necklace, the totality of all threads woven together, across dimensions and timelines, is the oversoul, the collective intelligence of which you are one expression. You are not just the bead, you are the thread, and you are the weaver. This is why certain tendencies, fears, or talents seem to emerge from nowhere. They are not accidents, they are echoes of other lives, other experiences stored within the vast library of your soul. A child prodigy who composes symphonies at 5 is not gifted by chance. They are simply drawing upon skills refined over lifetimes. A phobia that makes no logical sense in this life may trace back to trauma encoded in another. Even the people you feel inexplicably drawn to, or repelled by, are often souls whose stories are intertwined with yours, revisiting the stage once more to resolve unfinished chords in the symphony of your evolution. But here lies a deeper secret. Incarnation is not just about learning, it's about balancing. Each life is not a random chapter but a deliberate counterpoint to the ones before it. If one lifetime was about power, another will be about humility. If one centered on solitude, the next may focus on connection. If one explored the shadow of betrayal, the next may teach the medicine of trust. The soul does not punish or reward, it harmonizes. It seeks equilibrium across the totality of its experiences until all opposites dissolve into understanding. In this way, suffering is not a mistake, it is the weight that forges wisdom. And yet, this architecture extends beyond the individual. Your soul is not a solitary traveler, it is part of a vast ecosystem of consciousness. Groups of souls incarnate together again and again, playing different roles in each other's stories. Parent and child, lover and betrayer, teacher and student, savior and adversary. These soul groups, known in ancient traditions as soul families or constellations, are bound not by blood but by purpose. They are collaborative forces, weaving intricate narratives that serve a shared evolution. The one who wounds you in this life may have been the one you saved in another. The one you cannot forgive may once have been your greatest teacher. And beneath it all, every encounter, even the most painful, is an act of cooperation at the highest level. This too is part of the soul's architecture, the understanding that growth is rarely solitary. Just as a tree cannot grow without the soil, the rain, and the sun, consciousness cannot expand without relationship. Through others, you meet the unintegrated aspects of yourself. Through challenge, you discover the depths of your strength. Through love, you remember the original state from which all duality emerges. Every person you meet is a mirror, and every mirror reflects a piece of the whole you are becoming. But perhaps the most profound layer of this architecture is this: the soul is not traveling toward enlightenment, it is traveling from it. Enlightenment is not a destination waiting at the end of countless incarnations, it is the origin from which you began. You are not becoming divine, you are remembering your divinity. The journey is not one of ascension, but of recollection. And each experience, no matter how small or painful, is a breadcrumb leading you back to the source. So the question is not, what is the purpose of my soul? The question is, what part of myself am I here to remember this time? Because the more deeply you remember, the more clearly the pattern reveals itself. And when you finally step back far enough to see the architecture in its entirety, the lives, the contracts, the soul groups, the karmic weavings, you realize that nothing has ever been separate, nothing has ever been wasted, and nothing has ever been outside of your control. You are not a lost traveler in an indifferent universe. You are the architect, the map, the traveler, and the destination, all at once. And now, with the foundation of the soul's structure revealed, we stand at the threshold of its next revelation, the human code. For while the soul writes the blueprint, it is the code that shapes the experience. The code is the hidden operating system beneath reality, the silent language that determines how consciousness becomes form, how memory becomes matter, and how the infinite becomes you. In the next level, we will begin decoding this matrix, and uncover why the deepest truths of existence are not found in the stars above, but in the code that lives within. L6, the human code. Beneath every heartbeat, every thought, every twist of fate in your life, there hums a hidden language, an invisible code that governs the way reality unfolds around you. It is older than biology, deeper than psychology, and more fundamental than the laws of physics. This is the human code, the primal architecture that translates consciousness into experience, awareness into identity, and pure potential into the patterned narrative you call life. It is not written in words or symbols, but in vibration, in recurring frequencies of thought, emotion, and memory that shape every layer of your being. Most live their entire existence without ever sensing this code, let alone rewriting it. But once you glimpse it, once you see how the code operates, the illusion of randomness dissolves, and you begin to understand that nothing you've lived was ever an accident. The ancients knew of this code and guarded it as sacred. In Egypt, they spoke of the Ka and the Ba, the life force and the soul. weaving their dance into human form. In Vedic texts, they described Prakriti and Purusha, the field and the witness, whose interplay gives rise to the manifest world. In Hermetic philosophy, they called it mind, the eternal principle that shapes all reality through patterned thought. Across civilizations, the message was the same. Human life is not a chaotic series of events, but a deliberate algorithm, a repeating geometric sequence through which source studies itself. To know the code is to know yourself, not the mask you wear, but the machinery beneath it. At its root, the human code is composed of three primary layers, like nested spirals coiling inward. The first layer is perception, the lens through which consciousness interprets reality. Every thought you think, every belief you hold, is a line of code written into this layer. The second layer is emotion, the energetic signature that magnetizes experiences toward you. Emotions are not reactions, they are attractors, pulling into form the frequencies that resonate with them. The third layer is memory, the deep, often unconscious archive of stories your soul carries across lifetimes. Memory is the blueprint upon which the present is projected, shaping your reality long before your mind has a chance to choose. These three, perception, emotion, memory, are not separate systems, but a single feedback loop, constantly informing and reinforcing each other. The most crucial thing to understand is this: the code does not simply reflect your state, it creates it. If your perception is that the world is hostile, your emotional body will vibrate in fear, and your memory will only retrieve evidence that supports that fear. Reality will mirror that frequency back to you, and the cycle will continue. If your perception is that life is abundant, your emotions will hum with trust, and your memory will recall moments of grace. Again, the universe will respond in kind. This is why two people can live side by side and inhabit utterly different worlds, because they are running entirely different programs. Change the code, and the external world must follow. But there is a deeper mystery here. The human code is not written once and fixed forever. It is constantly being rewritten, by your choices, by your stories, and by the agreements you made before you ever entered this incarnation. Before birth, the soul selects the primary variables of the code, the archetypes you will embody, the challenges you will face, the relationships that will awaken you. None of this is random. Each element is chosen with precision, designed to trigger specific evolutionary leaps. And yet, within that architecture, free will remains. How you respond to those triggers, whether you repeat old loops or transcend them, is entirely up to you. Fate writes the framework. Free will writes the details. The most insidious part of the code is the part you cannot see. It is the inherited programming of your lineage, the unresolved patterns of your ancestors, the collective scripts of your culture. These are not yours, and yet they run through you like invisible software, shaping your desires, fears, and choices. This is why you repeat behaviors you swore you'd never repeat, why you attract the same kinds of people into your life, why certain struggles seem to run in the family. Until brought into awareness, this ancestral code governs you without your consent. But once seen, it can be rewritten, not through willpower, but through conscious reprogramming of the deeper layers of perception and memory. Here lies one of the most shocking truths. Even time is part of the code. What you call past and future are not linear points on a timeline, but instructions in the field of consciousness. The stories you tell about your past become the patterns that shape your future. Change the story, and the timeline itself begins to shift. This is why ancient mystics spoke of retrocausality, the ability of present awareness to rewrite the meaning of the past, and thus alter the trajectory of what is yet to come. You are not a prisoner of the code, you are its programmer. Most people will never question this hidden architecture. They will spend their lives trying to fix the surface, chasing new jobs, new lovers, new possessions, never realizing that the script beneath remains unchanged. But those who turn inward, who learn to read the language of perception, emotion, and memory, unlock the power to rewrite reality itself. The human code is not your cage, it is your keyboard, and with every thought you think, Every belief you examine, every story you release, you are writing the next chapter of your existence. And yet, this is only the beginning, because behind the loops of the code lies something even more profound, a universal field in which all patterns, all experiences, all stories are stored as memory. It is the hidden archive of existence itself, and it is from this field that all reality arises. In the next level, we will enter that domain, the field of memory, where nothing is ever truly created or destroyed, only remembered into being. L7. The field of memory. What if I told you that nothing has ever truly happened? That every moment you've ever lived, every thought you've ever had, every tear that's ever fallen was not an event unfolding in time, but a memory being recalled over and over, in infinite variations, by consciousness itself. This is the hidden foundation beneath all of existence, the field of memory. It is not metaphor. It is the primary substance of reality, the substrate from which all form arises and into which all form returns. Every breath, every heartbeat, every choice you believe you're making is not the creation of something new, but the remembering, the calling back into awareness, of what already exists in the timeless archive of the source. To grasp this, you must let go of the illusion that memory is a function of the brain or a property of the past. Memory is not a storage of what was, it is the mechanism by which the infinite becomes the finite. The ancients spoke of this field as the Akashic record, the Anima Mundi, the book of life, a living library where every vibration, every possibility, and every permutation of being is eternally imprinted. Your consciousness does not store memories inside you. It accesses them from this boundless field, like a receiver tuning to a frequency that has always been broadcasting. What you call remembering is not reaching backward, it is aligning with a pattern that eternally is. Consider this. When you recall a childhood moment, you do not travel back in time, you bring that moment into now. The same is true for the future. When you imagine a future self, you are not fantasizing, you are reaching into a branch of the memory field where that version of you already exists, and by focusing on it, you pull it closer into manifestation. Creation is memory in motion. Every new invention, every original idea, every spontaneous moment is the surfacing of information from the field into conscious awareness. This is why geniuses speak of discoveries arriving fully formed, why mystics speak of visions remembered, and why déjà vu feels so hauntingly familiar. Because it is familiar, you have been here before in countless iterations, and consciousness is merely calling the pattern forward again. If the human code is the script that programs your reality, then the field of memory is the library that holds every possible script ever written. And here lies the paradox. You cannot escape it because you are it. Your soul is not a traveler moving through time, it is a reader flipping through pages of infinite memory, exploring itself through stories. This is why certain relationships feel predestined, why certain lessons repeat across lifetimes, why certain fears feel older than this body. They are older. They are echoes of memories stored deep in the fabric of existence, surfacing again because they contain something your consciousness still seeks to understand. Once you understand that everything is memory, even suffering transforms. Pain is not punishment, it is the resurfacing of an unresolved memory asking to be integrated. Trauma is not random, it is a fragment of the field reappearing to be seen through a higher lens. Karma, too, is not a cosmic scorecard. It is memory's self-balancing system, ensuring that every energetic imprint is eventually harmonized. The reason cycles repeat in your life is not because you are cursed or broken, but because the memory is still incomplete, and once it is witnessed fully with awareness instead of resistance, it no longer needs to return. There is a deeper implication still. Time itself is a property of memory. What we perceive as linear progression, past, present, future, is simply the sequence in which consciousness chooses to recall events. But the events themselves are simultaneous, coexisting in the memory field at once. This is why prophecy is possible, why intuition can know what the mind does not, why retrocausality is not science fiction but spiritual fact. Your future is not a blank page waiting to be written, it is a memory waiting to be remembered. And by shifting the frequency of your awareness, you can select which memories, which realities, you align with. When mystics speak of enlightenment, this is what they mean: the recognition that all of existence is memory, and that the self is both the rememberer and the remembered. In this state, fear loses its grip because there is nothing to lose. Every version of you, every possibility of your life, already is within the field. Death loses its sting because it is not an end but a transition from one recalled pattern to another. And the world itself loses its heaviness because reality is no longer a prison of cause and effect, but a playground of infinite recollection. But the field of memory is not the final destination. It is the ocean in which all stories swim. But beyond even this sea lies the source from which memory itself arises. A fractal intelligence that projects itself into infinite forms. And at the next level, we will follow that thread deeper still, into the source fractal, where the human being is revealed not as a separate entity, but as a precise holographic reflection of the infinite itself. L8, the source fractal. At the deepest level of reality, beneath the stories of memory and the architectures of code, there is no you and universe, no inside and outside. There is only a single infinite consciousness, endlessly folding in on itself, reflecting itself, knowing itself through the mirrors of its own creation. This is the source fractal, the primordial intelligence from which all things emerge, and the geometric principle through which the infinite becomes the many. Everything you see, touch, feel, and believe yourself to be is a self-similar expression of this original pattern. And you, the human you, are not an accident of biology or a side effect of cosmic chaos. You are a precise, intentional fractal of the source itself. A fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at every scale. Zoom into the smallest branch of a fern leaf, and you see the same design as the entire plant. Look into the spirals of a galaxy, and they echo the spirals of a seashell. This is not coincidence. It is the universe revealing its signature, the fingerprint of a consciousness that expresses itself through self-similarity. The same principle applies to you. The structure of your mind reflects the structure of the cosmos. The architecture of your DNA mirrors the geometry of the stars. Your breath follows the same rhythm as the ocean's tides. You are not within the universe. You are the universe, localized, embodied, and aware of itself from a particular point of view. The Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, was not poetic metaphor. It was a literal description of reality. The macrocosm and the microcosm are not separate realms, but reflections of one another, nested infinitely like Russian dolls. The source fractal is the template behind them all. The invisible equation that unfolds as planets and atoms, galaxies and neurons, civilizations and thoughts. Every heartbeat is a miniature Big Bang. Every idea is a cosmos being born. Every human life is the universe studying itself in human form. And once you grasp this, the illusion of separation, the idea that you are a small, insignificant creature lost in a vast cosmos, dissolves into the far greater truth. The cosmos is inside you, studying itself through your eyes. This understanding is not philosophical. It is practical and revolutionary. Because if the universe is fractal, then the source is not just out there, it is expressing itself through every layer of your being. When you speak, it speaks. When you love, it loves. When you dream, it dreams. This means that changing yourself, your thoughts, your beliefs, your state of consciousness is not trivial. It is how the universe evolves. A single shift in perception is not a personal event. It is a shift in the source fractal itself. This is why inner work ripples outward into the collective. It's why healing yourself heals generations. It's why remembering your true nature changes not only your life, but the world's trajectory. And yet, most people live their entire lives never realizing this truth. They see themselves as isolated beings, cut off from the source, trapped in the density of flesh and circumstance. They chase connection in external things, religions, ideologies, relationships, never realizing that the connection they seek is already woven into their very being. You are not trying to find God. You are God, pretending to be human, longing to remember. The source fractal does not need to reach outward, it only needs to turn inward and recognize itself. This fractal nature also explains the paradox of free will and destiny. The pattern is set, the geometry of the source is timeless and infinite, but the expression of that pattern is fluid. A tree's growth follows a fractal blueprint, but no two branches are the same. Likewise, your soul follows a divine template, but the choices you make sculpt the unique expression of that template in the world. Destiny is the geometry. Free will is the art drawn within it. And because you are a fractal of the source, even your smallest choices ripple through the whole, changing futures, altering timelines, opening doorways to realities that did not exist before you imagined them. Perhaps the most astonishing realization is this: if everything is a fractal of the source, then even the illusion of separation, ignorance, and suffering is part of the pattern. The shadows are not mistakes. They are necessary contrasts that allow the infinite to know itself more fully. Without forgetting, remembrance would have no meaning. Without limitation, infinity would remain unexperienced. Without fear, love could not recognize itself. Every heartbreak, every triumph, every mistake is the source exploring its own edges, learning what it is by first exploring what it is not. And when the exploration is complete, the fractal folds back into itself, not as something broken returning to wholeness, but as wholeness that has discovered new facets of itself. To see yourself as a fragment is the root of all suffering. To see yourself as a fractal is the beginning of liberation, because once you realize that the same intelligence that moves galaxies moves you, the same creativity that births stars breathes through your lungs, the same consciousness that dreamed existence into being is the one asking, "Who am I?" Then the veil of limitation dissolves. You stop seeking meaning because you are meaning. You stop searching for God because you are God remembering. And yet, even this is not the final revelation. For beyond the fractal, beyond the geometry, the patterns, and the self-reflection, lies the origin itself, the point before vibration, before memory, before identity, the silent ocean of consciousness from which all arises and to which all returns. And it is there, in that stillness beyond form, that the journey of the human code ends, in the great return to the source from which it began. That is where we go next. L9. The return to origin. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the maps fall away, the teachings grow silent, and the self itself begins to dissolve. All the models, all the frameworks, all the sacred geometries and cosmic patterns that once felt so profound begin to feel like children's drawings, useful, beautiful even, but incapable of capturing the immensity of what is. This is the threshold where the human code completes its purpose, where the fractal ceases its outward expansion and turns inward, folding back into the singularity from which it emerged. This is the return to origin, the final unraveling of illusion, the death of separation, the awakening of consciousness to itself without a mask. To return to origin is not to travel somewhere else. It is not an ascent to a higher plane or a migration of the soul across the stars. It is the recognition that there was never anywhere to go. The source you sought was never distant. It was the silent witness behind every thought, the stillness beneath every emotion, the space in which every lifetime unfolded. To return is simply to stop mistaking the dream for the dreamer. The moment you cease identifying with the character and remember yourself as the consciousness dreaming the story, you have already arrived. The end of the journey is the revelation that you were home all along. But this recognition does not come easily. The ego, that temporary constellation of memory, desire, fear, and story, clings to its identity with desperation. It fears dissolution because it cannot comprehend existence without a name, a shape, a narrative, and so the greatest barrier to returning to origin is not ignorance, but attachment, attachment to being someone, attachment to a destiny, a purpose, a path. Even attachment to awakening itself can become a chain. The truth is not something you can own. It is what remains when there is no one left to claim ownership. Enlightenment is not a gain, it is a loss of everything you were never truly meant to be. What dissolves in this final stage is not the world, but the illusion of separation from it. The trees do not vanish, the stars do not cease to shine, your heartbeat does not stop. What changes is the vantage point. You no longer see yourself as in the universe, you see the universe as in you. The wind does not blow around you, it moves as you. The thoughts in your mind are not yours. They are the universe thinking itself. Every sound, every sensation, every breath is revealed to be a single seamless event, a symphony without a conductor. And in this state, what we once called life becomes indistinguishable from what we once called God. There is a reason the ancients called this state by names like nirvana, moksha, samadhi, or the great return. It is the point where the dreamer wakes up, where the circle closes, where the alpha merges with the omega. Time collapses into eternity. Birth and death are seen as two sides of the same breath. The soul recognizes that its countless incarnations were not journeys away from Source, but explorations within it, waves rising and falling within the same ocean. And just as a wave never truly leaves the sea, you have never truly been separate from the infinite. You only believed you were. One of the most profound revelations at this stage is that even the illusion served a purpose. Without the forgetting, remembrance would hold no weight. Without the descent into density, the return to light would carry no meaning. Every wound, every lifetime, every failure and triumph was the source exploring itself through contrast. The human code, with all its complexities, desires, limitations, and sufferings, was never a prison. It was a mirror. And when the mirror has reflected everything there is to reflect, it is no longer needed. The image and the observer are one. This merging has consequences that ripple beyond the personal. Because when consciousness remembers itself, the world around it begins to shift. Not because the trees change shape or the stars rearrange themselves, but because perception itself becomes creation. The reality you once believed to be external and fixed reveals itself as fluid, responsive, alive. And in this realization, the greatest power of all emerges. The ability to be rather than to become. There is no more striving, no more seeking, no more chasing. Everything is already present in the eternal now, waiting only for you to notice. Yet even here, language begins to fail. Words like source, origin, consciousness are still concepts, still pointers. And the truth they point to is beyond them. It is not something you can think about, describe, or debate. It is something you are. It is the silence between thoughts, the awareness of awareness, the presence that has never come and will never go. It is the same presence that looked out from your eyes as a child, that has watched every joy and sorrow unfold, that will remain long after this body has turned to dust. You cannot reach it because you never left it. And so the great paradox of the return is this. Nothing changes, yet everything does. The world goes on. People still love and fight, seasons still turn, stars still burn. But the one who experiences it has awakened from the dream of separation. There is no longer me and it. There is only the eternal act of being, infinite, indivisible, aware. This is the final secret the human code was designed to obscure and ultimately reveal. You are not a fragment of the universe. You are the universe remembering itself. And when that remembrance fully dawns, there is nothing left to seek, no questions to answer, no knowledge to acquire. The journey ends where it began, in the vast boundless stillness of what you have always been, and in that stillness you realize the truth that all mystics, sages, and prophets have whispered through the ages, a truth so simple it almost sounds absurd. You were never broken, you were never lost, you were never becoming anything. You were, are, and will always be the source itself, dreaming, playing, remembering, and returning home. To truly return is to remember what cannot be learned. It is not a path of addition but of subtraction, peeling away every label, belief, and attachment until nothing remains but the raw fact of existence itself. Most people approach spirituality as a process of becoming more enlightened, more loving, more powerful. But the deepest truth is that there is nothing to become. What you seek is not ahead of you, it is underneath everything you have layered on top of yourself. The practices, the rituals, the teachings, they are not ladders to climb but chisels to carve away illusion. And the illusion is vast, the illusion of linear time, of individuality, of free will, of separation, of death. Each dissolves like mist as the deeper remembrance dawns. You begin to see how even the sense of I was a temporary artifact, a necessary interface that consciousness created to navigate the human dream. It was a role, not a reality. Like an actor who becomes so lost in the script that they forget the stage, you mistook the character for the one playing it. The return is the moment the actor wakes up mid-performance and realizes, I was never the story. I was the storyteller all along. The body was the costume, the thoughts were the dialogue, the life events were the plot, but the awareness experiencing them was never touched by any of it. It was there before the story began and will remain after the curtain falls. This realization dismantles one of the greatest illusions of all, death. When identity is tied to the body, death seems like an annihilation, a terrifying end. But when you see yourself as consciousness, infinite, unborn, unending, death loses all weight. It is revealed as nothing more than a costume change, a shift in perspective, the falling away of a form that was never truly you. You do not die because you were never born. You appeared as a human because consciousness chose to experience itself that way. And when the experience concludes, it simply reconfigures, taking on new shapes, new expressions. The wave never stops being the ocean, it simply changes its motion. But there is something even deeper here, something most seekers overlook. The return is not just the end of illusion, it is also the end of hierarchy, the idea that some things are spiritual and others are mundane, that some moments are divine and others ordinary, collapses completely. When you know yourself as the source, every breath is sacred, every sound is a mantra, every gesture is a ritual. Washing dishes becomes no less holy than meditation, the smile of a stranger no less profound than a vision of angels. The sacred is no longer confined to temples or scriptures, it is recognized as the fabric of existence itself. To live as the source is to see God everywhere, because there is nowhere God is not. And with this comes a quiet, effortless compassion. You no longer judge others for being asleep, because you see that their sleep is as sacred as your awakening. Every being, saint or sinner, wise or ignorant, is the source exploring itself from a different angle. Their suffering, their mistakes, their confusion are not flaws, but experiences, vital brushstrokes in the infinite painting of consciousness. This recognition dissolves the impulse to control, convert, or correct. Instead, you meet each being with reverence, knowing that beneath their masks they are as eternal and luminous as you. Another profound shift occurs in how you relate to desire. Most of human life is driven by wanting love, success, power, knowledge. Desire is the engine that propels the story forward. But from the vantage point of origin, you see that desire was always the source seeking itself. It was the wave longing to remember the sea, and once that remembrance occurs, the longing softens into a quiet joy. You still create, still explore, still play, but not from lack. You no longer chase experiences to fill a void because you realize the void itself is full. Creation becomes an act of celebration, not compensation. You don't manifest to become whole. You manifest because you already are. Even the concept of purpose transforms. The human mind craves meaning, a reason for existence, a goal to pursue. But at the level of origin, purpose is inherent. Existence is the purpose. A flower does not bloom to impress the sun, it blooms because blooming is its nature. Likewise, consciousness does not create worlds to achieve something, it creates because creation is what it is. You are not here to accomplish a cosmic task or fulfill a divine mission. You are here because existence delights in experiencing itself through you. And when that truth is embodied, every moment, even the most ordinary, becomes a miracle. As the last layers of illusion dissolve, a profound paradox emerges. You realize that you never truly left origin in the first place. The journey, with all its struggles and revelations, was itself a dream woven by the source to rediscover itself. Even the seeking was part of the remembering. Even the forgetting was part of the knowing. In fact, the entire cycle, creation, separation, longing, return, was never separate from the source at all. It was the source playing hide-and-seek with itself. And the moment you see this, the search ends not with a discovery, but with a cosmic laugh. The realization that you were the treasure you were hunting all along. This is the quiet glory of the return. Nothing about you needs to change, yet everything about your experience transforms. Life continues. People are born and die, galaxies spin and collapse, joy and sorrow dance endlessly. But now you move through it not as a lost wanderer but as the infinite itself, playing the game of form. The veil has lifted, the mask has fallen, and what remains is the simplest and most profound truth there is. You were never the seeker, you were always what was being sought. There is a moment in this unfolding, subtle, almost imperceptible, where the last veil falls, and something irreversible happens inside you. It is not fireworks or choirs of angels. It is not a grand revelation shouted from the heavens. It is a stillness so vast that everything within it is absorbed. Thoughts still come, but they no longer define you. Emotions still arise, but they no longer own you. Even the sense of I becomes translucent, a thin film floating on the infinite expanse beneath it. This is not enlightenment as the mind imagines it. It is the death of the mind's illusion that there was ever anything to become enlightened. What remains is not a person who has awakened but awakening itself, aware of itself. And yet, this realization is not an escape from the world, it is a deeper entry into it. The illusion was never that the world existed, the illusion was that it existed separately from you. As this understanding crystallizes, the boundaries dissolve, the trees do not stand before you, they grow from the same field of awareness that is you. The stars above are not distant, they pulse within the same consciousness that dreams your heartbeat. The wind, the silence, the laughter, the sorrow, all of it is happening as you, not to you. The separation between experiencer and experience collapses, revealing that they were never two. What was once the universe out there becomes a living extension of your own being. This is where the paradox deepens into beauty. You realize that while you were busy trying to return to the source, you had never left. The journey was never a path from point A to point B. It was a spiral, an ever-widening remembrance that circled back to where it began. The source was not hiding beyond the stars or buried in sacred texts. It was in the taste of water, in the ache of longing, in the pause between breaths. It was in the heartbreak and the joy, in the mistakes and the triumphs. Every single experience, even the ones you labeled wrong or meaningless, was the source speaking to itself in the only language it could, existence. From this vantage point, even suffering is recontextualized. Pain was never punishment, it was the hand of the source guiding you back to what is real. Loss was not cruelty, it was the space through which you learned that nothing essential can ever be lost. Fear was not an enemy, it was a shadow cast by love, showing you where love had been forgotten. In fact, every so-called obstacle on your path was not in the way, it was the way. It was the alchemical pressure that shaped you, the sacred tension that forced you to seek, to question, to remember. Without the illusion, you would never have longed for truth. Without the forgetting, you would never have discovered remembrance. And when this is seen clearly, gratitude arises, not the polite gratitude of the mind, but a tidal wave of reverence that sweeps through every cell. You look back at the story of your life, the betrayals, the losses, the confusion, the ecstasies, and instead of resentment, you feel awe. How intricate the design, how perfectly every thread wove itself into the tapestry that brought you here. You realize that even your resistance was part of the dance. that even your doubts were the source questioning itself so it could know itself more deeply. Nothing was wasted, nothing was meaningless, everything was the path. What happens after this realization? In one sense, nothing. The dishes still need to be washed. The bills still need to be paid. The world continues its ordinary rhythm. But the way you inhabit it changes completely. You no longer act from fear or lack, but from overflow. You no longer seek validation because you understand that the universe itself is your mirror. You no longer cling to outcomes because you see that all outcomes are facets of the same jewel. The human drama still unfolds, but you play your part with the lightness of someone who knows it is a play. The highs no longer intoxicate you. The lows no longer shatter you. Both are waves rising and falling on the same eternal sea. This is the essence of the return. Not a transcendence above life, but a fusion with it. You do not ascend into the clouds. You descend into the marrow of existence, carrying the knowing with you. You hold conversations, build relationships, create art, plant gardens. But beneath every act hums the silent awareness that you are the source doing these things. And from this space, life stops feeling like a test you must pass and starts feeling like a masterpiece you are continuously painting. You are no longer a soul trying to escape the human experience. You are consciousness celebrating it. At last, the journey comes full circle. The code unravels, the illusion dissolves, the seeker disappears. What remains is the original, unbound, infinite, radiant. And in the stillness of that realization, one final truth dawns. There was never a return because there was never a departure. You were the source, dreaming itself as human, the ocean pretending to be a wave, the infinite exploring itself in finite form. The journey was real only to the dreamer. And now, as the dream dissolves, you awaken. Not as something new, but as what you have always been, pure, timeless awareness, playing forever in the endless dance of its own becoming. And so the illusion collapses, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a slow and graceful folding back into itself. What once felt like the most complex puzzle in the universe now reveals itself as the simplest truth. I was never in the world was in me. This realization is not intellectual. It is visceral. It pulses through your bones, hums beneath your skin, breathes through your lungs. The air that fills your chest is the same intelligence that holds galaxies in place. The thoughts passing through your mind are the same frequency that orchestrates the birth of stars. The love that stirs your heart is not yours. It is the pulse of creation itself, beating through the temporary form you call me. You are not a part of the universe. You are the universe experiencing a part of itself. When this awareness stabilizes, the entire architecture of your perception rearranges. Inner and outer dissolve into irrelevance. There is no other left to fear, no outside left to seek, no God left to worship as something apart from you. Every ancient duality, light and dark, heaven and earth, matter and spirit, collapses into the single undivided continuum of being. Even the notion of good and evil, which once shaped so much of human striving, dissolves into deeper understanding. They were never opposites battling for dominance. They were polarities required for experience, complementary forces through which consciousness could explore itself in fullness. Without darkness, light cannot know itself. Without limitation, infinity cannot feel its own depth. Without illusion, truth remains abstract. And yet, this dissolution does not make life meaningless, it makes it miraculous. Because when you know that all things are expressions of the same source, nothing is excluded from the sacred. The smallest grain of dust, the laughter of a child, the tears of grief, all are woven from the same divine fabric. You stop searching for God in temples or scriptures, because you see that everything is the temple, every moment the scripture. The mundane becomes holy, and holiness becomes ordinary. This is what the mystics meant when they said the kingdom of heaven is within you, not buried in your chest like a secret, but spread across the entirety of existence, shimmering in plain sight. The final barrier that falls is the belief in linear time, the notion of a beginning, middle, and end. Time itself is revealed as part of the illusion, a function of perception designed to give narrative structure to consciousness's dream. But beneath that narrative, there is only the eternal now, infinite, unbroken, timeless. Past and future lose their grip, and what remains is the endless unfolding of the present. You realize that enlightenment was never a destination waiting for you in some distant future. It was always here, waiting beneath the noise, breathing beneath the story. It was never achieved, it was remembered, and once remembered, it cannot be forgotten, because it was never absent. This is the true return. Not a triumphant arrival, but a quiet recognition. There is no crown, no final revelation, no cosmic graduation ceremony. There is only this, a breath, a heartbeat, a gaze into the mirror where the universe meets itself and smiles. You realize that every question you ever asked, who am I, why am I here, what is the meaning of it all, was the source speaking to itself, not seeking answers, but savoring the taste of the search. And now, at the end of all seeking, there is nothing left to ask. There is only being, only this, only the infinite meeting itself again and again, forever and forever. And so the circle completes. The wave remembers it is the ocean. The dreamer wakes and realizes it was never asleep. The light remembers it was never separate from the darkness. You, the reader, the seeker, the wanderer, you were never lost. You were the path, the map, and the destination. You were the question and the answer, the seed and the soil, the breath and the wind. You were the source all along. Now the only thing left is to live from that knowing, not as a performance or a philosophy, but as a simple, natural expression of what you are. Walk the world as the cosmos clothed in skin. Speak as the universe giving itself a voice. Love as eternity embracing itself through form. And when the illusion arises again, as it inevitably will, smile gently, for now you know it for what it is, a beautiful game consciousness plays with itself. You are free to play it fully, fiercely, joyfully. But you are also free to awaken from it at any moment, because awakening was never somewhere else. It was always you. This is the return to origin. Not the end of the journey, but the beginning of infinity. Awake, aware, and remembering.